This is the Sadcast.
That's a good name.
Sadcast.
See, you say that as a joke.
I've totally listened to something called the Sadcast.
What's up, homies? Welcome to the Quarinterns podcast. I think in every episode we've been in either a different place, and in this one we're in a similar place but a different position because we have one microphone and 4 people. So today we're talking about depression, and we have very special guest. Welcome, local depressed person.
Expert on being depressed.
What's your job?
Depression?
No.
What's your actual job?
Oh, I've been the Reset Worship Coordinator, and I'm now the Contemporary Music Director.
Promotion.
Yeah. Clap track.
Yay.
So that's like, yeah, I support modern worship for Asbury, so supporting youth and the bridge. So,
Cute.
yeah.
We love her.
Her.
Her?
The bridge gives off
Her.
feminine the bridge gives off that.
I'm fine with that. That's cool.
We support women on this podcast.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So depression, I've got that.
There's a few ways that we can
All right,
kind of tackle
Raise your
this.
hand if you have depression. Nice.
What was the indicator / catalyst / age that you realized you were dealing with it summed up?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, we'll go.
Go around? Yeah, so my first round of depression was really quick, and that kind of made the second one harder. But I think I was like 22, 23, had panic attacks for the first time. It was like a really strange week. Like, it was just 1 week. I was in a relationship that I needed to get out of, and I think it was caused because, like, my heart was in, my brain was like, bro, you got to get out, kind of a thing. And, like, when those things don't line up, like, yeah, it's no good. So really bad for about a week. Ended the relationship and, like, woke up like a new person, which was cool, except when I got depression again when I was like 28, 29, and I'm 32 now. So I'm rounding like year 4 now, or finishing year 4. So yeah, kind of 2 rounds. This one's like the real one of like just kind of sticking around.
You got a trial run?
Had a trial run, but yeah, having like a quick, having a quick turnaround doesn't really set you up for the lasting kind. So it was a little more. It took me maybe like a year to come to grips with like, oh, this is just my life now. Cool. Yeah, so that's me.
I got my first mine kind of had like two runs in one I'm still in now. My first one happened my sophomore years, but it went for about 2 years. It was my sophomore and junior years in high school, and I just left the school that I was going to, and I homeschooled for 2 years, and it was just an all-around terrible experience. So I also had some like outer factors kind of following. My family was going through a lot. It was just an overall very just outwardly dark time, and I already was dealing with mental illness to start with, so it didn't take much to kind of start that trajectory. Mm-hmm. And I was able to pull out of the spell senior year, and then kind of talking about, I was like, that's like that trial run that first time, and then you actually get into it, and it was my first semester of my freshman year of college, and I was going to a university that was terrible for me, and I got plunged so much worse than I did the first time. And once I got out of that environment, I definitely felt a lot better. However, I still find myself dealing with like that kind of like not flatline feeling, but yeah, like that more consistency that I've never experienced before. So, yeah.
Okay. I don't know if we joked about this on air for the last podcast or not.
Okay.
However, we started joking about how I have no pain. Where in my life, there has never been one, like, significant trauma. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. So,
Yeah.
the closest... So, like, I don't really know if I've ever been, like, truly depressed. But the closest I can think is, like, when I was a senior... Okay, hold up. When I was a sophomore, I got diagnosed with ADD. Apparently, there's this thing... You're supposed to get diagnosed when you're, like, 5, right? There's a thing where, like, if you're, like, kind of quiet... I'm like a introvert and extrovert on that thing. I'm like 50-50.
Ambivert.
That's the word.
It's a new word.
Yeah.
Vocabulary.
Okay,
Yeah.
so teachers were like, oh, he's being quiet. He's paying attention, right? So, because normally you have noisy kids and you talk to the parents and you go, I think he has ADD or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
That never happened to
Yeah,
me.
so you went kind of
And
under
so,
the
like,
radar.
yeah, I get to high school, work gets harder, and there's more court, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm learning. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I'm failing chemistry, and my parents are like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't even know what we're talking about right now. And then they're like, okay, well, maybe let's go to the doctor or something. I don't know what sparked going to the doctor. But he was like, you probably have ADD, right? So he puts me on this stuff, which apparently is like smart medicine. Because I ended with an A in chemistry.
Dude, legit, man.
Dude, I rocketed up.
That's awesome.
Okay. Then, okay, so I'm taking the smart meds starting
I think
sophomore
that's
year.
what they're called.
And, yeah. And through junior year, get to senior year, I'm like, the smart meds don't have the same effect. Let's double the dosage.
The doctor said
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa.
Okay. So
That's a method.
we do that, and dude, I turned into the worst human. I don't know. Where, like, I'm probably missing severe parts of this story. Just because, like, I don't remember why we had to double the dosage for real.
Yeah.
But it turned me into this, like, just really angry, whatever. And my doctor says, hey, sometimes ADD can be confused with OCD.
Interesting.
And so it turns out I have a little bit of both of those.
OCD and ADD.
Yeah, but so the
Interesting.
closest thing I can think to depression, I guess, was that period where, like, I just couldn't find happiness in anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's depression. Yeah.
I don't know, like, there wasn't
Yeah.
a cause other than, like, I was just not taking the right medicine,
Yeah.
right? But,
Yeah. Well, and that's the interesting thing. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but, like, so, like, my current bout, like, started with an abusive boss. And, like, left that job, got out of that scenario, and I was like, sweet, it's going to be solved. And when it wasn't, you're just like, but I got rid of the thing that caused it.
That's how I felt with
And that's not
Sandberg, yeah.
really how it works all the time. So, like,
right.
yeah, in your case, right, like, you had depression and you're just like, I don't know why. You just did.
Yeah.
It's like, that's kind of how it is sometimes. It sucks. I think that's why, like, depression already sucks. That, like, just adds a little more suck on top. Like, it's really bad. Like, or it makes it more difficult.
Yeah.
But it's so normal at the same time. And I think it's just because we don't have conversations like this that we don't really have that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that, like, depression affects different people differently. It's not
Yeah.
all just, like, one, like, we're all just sad the same way, and at the
Yeah.
same time, it's like, no, it affects you.
Yeah.
Like, and depression's not always, like, a consistent thing. It's like, one moment you'll be fine, the next moment you're like, I'm not feeling it right now. Like, I
Yeah.
just can't do anything. And so, I'd say my depression started in, like, the 7th grade. So, we starting out young.
Yeah.
Overachiever.
I was probably depressed as a kid and didn't know it.
Yeah.
But so I was doing things that I was in, like, programs at school that I hated, but I kept going to because I felt like eventually they get better, and then they didn't. And I also just had, like, incredibly low self-esteem. And those two mixed together really just aren't good.
Yeah.
To put it any other way. And so I went to the doctor and they were like, yeah, you're depressed. You should get some meds or something.
Yeah.
And then I met Layla, who's great. That's my psychologist.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I went to a counselor person for she was for 2 months. And every time I went home, I felt more depressed when I left.
Oh, man.
I hate
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And then they switched me, and I was like, oh, this is how it's supposed to... You're supposed to,
Yeah.
solve the problems when you're...
Yeah.
Or at least make it a little bit better.
Man, I almost feel like finding a psychiatrist and finding a counselor is kind of like trying to find a spouse. In that, like, sometimes you find someone or find a significant other, and you're just like, oh, this is worse than the other thing. Like, what am I doing? And then when you find that one, you're just like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be like. Like, I'm supposed to, have more hope each time. Like, even if I come in, hopeless, I don't know, one of the best things early on, one of my counselors said, was, obviously they can't, 100% feel things differently for you, but it was encouraging. They were just like, I'm just gonna believe for you for a little bit, as long as I've got to, I'm gonna believe for you that things are gonna be okay, and then I'm gonna help you catch up. And that was just to have that kind of empathy and that kind of relationship was really, really helpful. But yeah, having the right kind of counselor can change everything.
Well, also there's such a stigma, or at least there used to be, about having to go for help or about seeing a psychologist or therapist or whatever. But it's so funny because I feel like older generations are still very secretive about it, but Gen Z's
Yeah.
what's up? I just got back from my psychologist.
Yes.
She's doing great.
Yeah. Got a sucker.
Yeah. That's so true. God.
Had a puppy.
I mean, it's still, the conversation's still not perfect, but it's better.
Yeah. That was the thing, one of the hardest things about the college that I was at, too, was, I went to go see one of the counselors on campus and got horrible help, but it was also kind of a blessing in disguise because it also helped me realize that because I went in and at first I was thinking I'm just adjusting to college and I'm struggling, but when the help was so bad, I also realized that I was dealing with something a lot bigger than what I thought, and so that was helpful in a way of realizing that the help I needed had to come from elsewhere. Because I was diagnosed with OCD when I was 9, and I've been seeing a therapist consistently since then. I'm 19, so I've been in therapy for 10 years. I have cycled through so many different things. So it's it started out being OCD, and then as I got older, I started going to therapy for depression and more stuff like that. But I've also been seeing a psychiatrist, which is the same thing basically as a therapist. However, they are licensed. I don't know if it's a license, but they can prescribe meds, so they can do they can do medications, they can do that kind of stuff. So I've also been seeing one of those for pretty much the same amount of time. But yeah, so it's so when I got such bad help on campus, it redirected me back there. But talking about the stigma, once I had reached out for help, no one knew what to do with me. I became very I just that concept to so many people was so foreign, or they've never had to do it, or if someone does, then they must be really broken. No one really knew, if they they'd ask, they were kind, and they would ask me are you okay, and they genuinely wanted to know, and so I would talk to them a little bit about, not obviously dump everything out, but I tell a bit, and they just,
no, I'm not okay.
Yeah, and there were some days I would do that. I had kind of a tight knit group there, and there's if they'd ask me, I'd be no, but at the end of the day, they wouldn't know kind of what to do, and that was very isolating and very difficult.
Yeah,
just because those conversations it wasn't that conversation, and I'm not saying everybody has to understand, but just having that conversation in general was a non-existent part of the culture, and that wore you out real quick.
It was also important, that brings up the fact of having at least a few friends that you're if I'm in this headspace and can't get out of it, I know I can call them, and it's
yeah, if you haven't heard from me for 2 weeks, I need a checkup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you were talking about of the stigma stuff, I think is why, because it's true for I think millennials are a little more open than our parents for sure, but not as open as you guys are, which I think is the gift. So what I've tried to do, it's kind of, it still kind of weirds people out. But whatever someone's like, oh yeah, I'm depressed or I have anxiety, I'm like, me too. I'm like, what's up? Like, we're depressed bros.
Yeah.
Like, this is our thing.
I
Like,
want to show this is depressed.
yeah.
Is this our thing? Like,
Yeah. Oh, what's up? We can be friends. Like, it's like,
You got trauma. I got trauma too.
yeah, right. And it's like, I think like some of that like I need, right, of like just owning it. Like I think the more like what you were talking about, like you of course don't like dump everything out for everybody all the time, but the more I can just go like, I'm depressed, I don't like that, but that's just the state of things. And so like I feel like my job like 4 years into this for myself is just like learning to accept it as like, cool, this is a way of life. Like some people have other things that they have to deal with. Like this is mine. I wish it was gone, but it's not. So like, I don't know, my counselor, he's awesome. And he put it as like, because I was really having trouble like transitioning from this, like, this is a season that I'm going to get out of into where I am now of like, this is just part of my life for who knows, he was like, yeah, it's just kind of like walking around with a shadow, like your shadow never leaves you. Doesn't have to win all the time. Like there'll be times where it feels like it does, but like it's just a part of you, right? And like, yeah, I think that's why these kind of conversations are really important. Is like, and what honestly I needed the first go around, like when it was like a week or two that was a nightmare, and then I was like, oh, glad I don't have to do that anymore. Like when you're 4 years in, you're like, that's a while,
Yeah, I isolated myself the first time, and it allowed me to focus on myself, in a way, and like figure out, like really what was going on, and like but however, it was also the worst thing I think I could have done, as I had a few people, like I didn't necessarily keep it all into myself, but I holed up and disappeared. And it was scary for a lot of people around me. They didn't know where I mean, literally not a trace. Left school, didn't tell, just gone.
Withdrawn types, what's that?
Yep.
Yeah.
We love it.
We'll do another Enneagram one.
Oh my god.
Yes.
I would be so down to do an Enneagram podcast. Yes.
Yeah.
So we're all withdrawn types in our Enneagram. So I'm a 5, you guys are 4s, you're 9.
9.
Those are the 3 withdrawn types. So yeah, in the stress mode, like we all have a tendency to just step back and disappear.
Right.
I think that's why it's important. Like what I said of like the 2-week check-in, like having those people that are just like, hey, if you haven't heard from me, like that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like not a problem, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
Something's
I
going on.
need help, and I'm definitely not gonna come forward and say that. Like,
I have one friend who she has to be a 2. Like I just know it, and so she'll like
she's
check up
like
on
chasing you down and texting
me. Like
you.
she's the best.
If we start saying numbers and you don't know what we're talking about, look up the Enneagram test and it will make sense.
Yeah. We can put it in show notes if you guys do that. Do you guys do show notes or descriptions?
I've never heard of show notes in my life.
Podcast things.
Oh, okay.
Oh, whoa.
Type 2 is basically like your help, really, you get motivation from helping other people.
Yeah.
And so if I'm like, because she knows how like withdrawn I'll get, she'll like text me, she'll be like, I know you're not okay, you're coming over here, or I'm coming to you. Either way, I'm showing up, I have Whataburger in the back of my car. like,
Yep.
like it's great, because I'm like, she knows that I have trouble like reaching out to her, so she'll be like, listen, I'm gonna beat you into being happy again, and here's what.
Yeah.
One thing that's weird, at least this has been my experience and experiences that I've heard with other people having, like talking about like withdrawing and like having people call on you, is sometimes, at least what I felt, sometimes with depression, I'm not always necessarily sad all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not always face planted, like, listening to, like, Bad Day and just crying my eyes out. Sometimes I just kind of, like...
You had a bad day!
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we can do any more for copyrights.
Yeah.
Get those
Well, we didn't
3
say who it was
seconds.
by. Good listening to it's not always
Yeah,
like
right.
that. Like, sometimes I'll get to like it's funny. My indicator that I know that if I'm like relapsing is not always when I'm sad, it's when I'm apathetic, which means it's the lack of feeling anything. No
Yeah.
happiness, no sadness, just empty. So you're talking about like dropping off the face of the earth, like sometimes I'll be in that state and it's like, well, I'm not sad. It's like, but I don't feel anything. Like nothing matters. Like nothing, the drive to do anything is gone. And it's just like, you're just there. And that has been my biggest indicator to be like, okay. Because like, I'm a very emotional person just anyways. I always have been. And so it's like, if I'm like usually like if I'm sad or like I'm really feeling it, I won't always chalk it up to like, oh, this could be something bigger. You know, if it goes on for long, you get to kind of know yourself eventually, like, and you see your signs of knowing. But that is my biggest indicator, is if I don't feel anything at all.
Yeah, I think for a season, that not feeling was like how I coped. So on the Enneagram, I'm a 5. So in times of distress, I shift toward the number 7, which is the enthusiast, which you would think would make me happier. It's probably how I learned to be funny, like at a younger age, was like getting made fun of for being a chubby kid. And you just like learn to be funny so that people don't make fun of you. Like if you joke first, everybody's like, oh, he's the fun fat kid. Like, that's cool. Right? But like, you know, so that was part of that shift. But in depression, like how that played out in my life was like just escape everything. I remember this was the year of like the abusive boss. My grandmother passed away. We had to put our dog down, who was like, he was pretty much the reason why I like stuck around. Like, luckily by the time that happened, like I was in a healthier spot, but like sorry, this is a tangent, but I think it'll be an important one. So, like, it's their job to, psychiatrists always will ask you, like, or doctors will, like, have you thought about suicide? My answer to that question was always kind of weird. And, like, they didn't really know what to do with it either. So I was like, well, not really, but, like, as I describe it, I'm like, that's a kind of it. Like what I told him was like, I really just like wanted to leave everything, hide in the woods, dig a hole under a tree, and just like wait it out. You know, it was more like the passive stuff. Like, but I thought about, I'm married, and I thought about just like packing up and like leaving and moving home, like in Kansas City. And like the weird reason, I'd been married, I'd made this lifetime commitment, but that honestly wasn't the thing that stuck. And like, we've had to get over that. Like, and this is not a secret. It's not healthy. But honestly, the reason I stuck around was because my dog, so he was like 110 pounds. He's a shepherd husky mix. So his hips were bad. So I had to carry him and pick him up, and like he'd like go to the bathroom all over himself. Like, I was the only one in the house who could pick the guy up. And like that purpose is what let me stick around. Like, because I was like, well, if I leave, like, Mia can't pick him up. And like, it's weird, but like, I think what I learned through that was like one of the ways to just like, because you've got to get through or like live with it. Like, but I think what I learned in that is the key is like finding or creating that purpose, right? That thing to wake up for. I don't know. That's been the freeing thing in the last few years of growing my own business, where I'm like consulting churches and coaching artists now, where I'm serving in churches with people that I like, doing stuff that I like getting, either finding or just deciding that purpose that you're going to have, I think was so important for me. but yeah, it was like that perfect storm that year of like awful job, grandma dies, dog dies, like
The
just,
trifecta of depression.
oh my gosh, yeah. And you're just like, oh, so this was back to the like can't feel. So I just had to like cut off feelings. Like it was better to be numb, right? Because like at least there, like I'm safe. I can get through. That was kind of where my head was. Now I'm in the place where I feel like I've accepted that, or like the negative emotions. Because I almost feel like they're like the two sides of the same coin with life, right? Like, because I was numb, but I also like wasn't feeling the negative, but I wasn't feeling joy either. And like, so I asked to like go back on some of the med stuff. We scaled it back a little bit because I was like 150% of what's normal, like on the med side. So we scaled it back to just normal. And that helped me to like finally open up. And I was like, oh, I have like joy again? I missed this. Like this is, you know? And it's still like difficult to balance. It's, I think 4 years in now, it's a little less heartbreaking on the like flip side when it's dark and when it's hard. But it's helped me know that like there is another side, right? Like even though I'm going to have these fluctuations, like that's okay. That's normal. I feel like I've had to learn that. Maybe like more emotional people have been more okay with that. Like that took time for me.
Okay, I want to go in a little bit of a different direction.
Yeah.
The church.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel that, in my experience, like I haven't heard, I don't think I can recall a single thing a pastor has said just on depression.
Yeah.
Do you guys have that experience of like the church doesn't talk about it?
Yeah.
And
Not
especially
in the way it needs to be talked
Yeah.
about.
I've
I've heard
the only time the
some...
church has talked about it is when I spoke about Discovery. And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. And,
and
so,
then
yeah.
especially like you were saying, like we're really open about it, and it feels like most of the population struggles with this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's so much more rampant
So
than
like
people think.
I guess why would we not address it? Do you know what I mean?
yeah. So I've got a friend who this was kind of when there seemed to be like a string of like megachurch pastor suicides a few years back. The one that kind of started not started the trend, like was the first in a long time.
Yeah.
Was actually at a friend of mine's church where she's the worship pastor.
Oh wow.
Or one of them, and their senior pastor committed suicide after coming back from rehab.
Oh.
I think some of why, so I say that is because I think some of why we don't talk about it is the same reason why he didn't feel like he could, is like when you're a lead pastor of a church, there's so many people looking to you for guidance, looking to you for an example. There's tons of pressure with that. So even if there are pastors with depression, again, there's still a stigma, right? That like there are church traditions out there, thank God not ours, right? That would say it's more like the prosperity gospel stuff. The dark side of that is like, well, if you're depressed, then that means you're not tight with Jesus.
Right.
That was
Like,
what I got
yeah.
my first semester, and it was...
Yeah, you just need to pray more. You just need to read
Yeah.
the Bible more.
If
Like,
you're
Be happy.
yeah.
It's not hard.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like
because
if you're
Jesus
not...
gives you joy, so you
Right.
just don't have enough Jesus.
Yeah, if
It's
you're
like,
on meds, you're looking in the wrong spot. Like,
Yeah.
it's because the Holy Spirit is not in you. If you're depressed, you've not
Yeah.
accepted it into your life. And God, that hurts, man.
Yeah, and so that doesn't help anybody, right?
Right, yeah.
So it's nice. It's a nice thought if you've never been depressed. You can have that thought, but just don't share it with anybody because
Oh,
it's not
please
real.
don't.
right?
Oh, my gosh.
But so you've got pastors with a lot of stress. You've got church traditions that believe that. You've got pastors who are depressed who want to believe that for themselves. You just got all of this stuff of like, And typically lead pastors are older than us. So
Right.
typically, like, I don't know, there are some, like, newer churches with, like, millennial senior pastors.
Yeah.
That's very rare.
Right.
So you've still got this generation of pastors who still feel like we can't talk about this, we can't be real about this.
Mm-hmm.
Senior pastors need to set an example for people. And so I think, like, if I were the lead pastor of a church today, I would 100% be talking about depression like what we're talking about, because I feel like, for me, I need to set the example, not in going, don't be depressed, be like me, be like, accept reality, follow Jesus. He has your best interests at heart. He'll be with you through your depression, with your depression. Like, he's going to be there. And even if your depression doesn't end till you die, like, there will be a day, like, that's like, call it heaven, call it whatever, but, like, that's that hope for future, right? Is that, like, there will be a day, right?
Right.
And, like, the commitment, like, what Jesus says to us in like passages that were written by people who were close to him, is that he's going to be with us through that. I think that's what the church needs more of now, like the capital C church, the big church, everybody.
Right.
Like, so I think some of it is that, like, all those stacks of, like, pastors under pressure, like depressed pastors don't feel like they are setting a good example or whatever. And it's like, that's not really how it is, because it's not like shepherds are setting examples for sheep. Like, shepherds just lead sheep, right? Like, you lead, like, think about Psalm 23 that talks about God, Jesus, pointing to Jesus as, like, a good shepherd. Like, he just leads them to what they need, right? So, like, you don't have to prove that you're the best sheep, because that's not your job anyway. Like,
Right.
pastoring is shepherding, so it's like leading people to the water. It's leading people to the truth. Like, you will never set a good enough example. Just take that off the table.
See, I almost wish that they would talk about it, because it also makes them more relatable to me. Because
Yeah.
also, I will listen to a sermon probably more intently and understand it better if I can relate to the person who is saying it, or relate to at least the angle that they're coming from.
Yeah.
And so if people were to be more, like, especially pastors, to be more honest about if they have mental health problems, like, because we all know they're not perfect, but it doesn't help us if you're trying to portray this, like, perfect
Yeah.
person. It's not helpful.
Yeah. There was
It's almost
only one
harmful.
perfect person. It's none of us.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, knock yourself
Yeah.
off that pedestal before you can even
Right.
step on it. Yeah.
I'm so tired of, like, the only depression messages I ever heard was pastors, like, going, man, and I, like, sort of felt depressed sometimes, right? And they're just, like, talking it about, like, or it's always comes in the form of the, like, pastors are people too. If you've ever heard one of those,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure you have. Like, pastors are people too. Like, even I've been, like, depressed for a little bit. And you,
It's like
but
the-
you say that, and there's already a negative connotation in that. It's like, but I've done drugs too. Like, I've done drugs before. Put it in that category, and you're like, all right, time out. Like, you actually cannot control whether you have depression or not.
Yeah.
You can't. It's just,
It
like,
just is.
It is
like,
what it is.
that's what I'm tired
What
of.
it
And
is.
honestly, I've left churches because of that. Because I'm just
Oh.
like, nope, done. Like, nope, this is not going to be a thing. Because, yeah, it just, like, perpetuates that world where, like, this is not okay. Like, we are problems to be solved instead of people to be accepted.
Oh, wow.
Like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've had really good conversations with pastors about depression, but it has happened one-on-one in counseling behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Like that it has been, and it's been with, like, youth pastors, and much less of a pastoral setting and more of, like, like, let's go grab coffee and
Yeah.
talk about, like, that's the only context I've ever had, like, I've received a scriptural message on depression is
Here's
in that
the
context.
problem with that. There's freedom in the light. Like, there's
Yeah,
freedom
exactly.
in the open. Like, And it's awesome to have a one-on-one like conversation, pastor and someone.
Yeah.
Like, and it is a missed opportunity to not have that.
Yeah. And that's
with
kind of my
everybody.
point with it. Is like, I've had these meetings, it's like, there's been growth in that, and there's been knowledge. It's like, why aren't we taking it out of
Yeah.
those doors? Why is it not? And this isn't
Right.
to bash the pastoral community,
No,
but like,
it's not.
but yeah, but it's like,
A call
why,
out for
why,
Yeah.
but why
If
is
you're
the culture?
But it's like, as a
This
depressed
is for
person,
you.
as a depressed follower of Jesus, like,
Yeah.
this is what we need, right? Like,
Yeah,
should be
yeah. And
like
there's so many
Depressed
people.
followers of Jesus.
yeah. But like, right? Back
New
to that shepherd
podcast.
thing. Like, the word pastor comes from shepherd, right? Like,
Right.
pastoral. That's what it means. Like,
Like past
yeah.
Yeah.
Like pasture. Like,
pasture,
yep. Same word.
Y'all.
All right, so check this out. So pastor is a shepherd, right? Church is sheep. Like old school pastors will call it their flock. That's why, right?
I get it.
Sheep, shepherd, right? Shepherd's job is to lead the sheep to water, to lead, like Psalm 23, he leads me beside still waters, leads me to green pastures, restores my soul, right? That is like a pastor who's a 10 out of 10. Like, that's the job of a pastor. So if you are not talking about depression like this, you are ignoring the sheep in your flock, you are ignoring the people in your church who need this desperately, who need it like life depends on it. Mm-hmm. And you're going, no, we're not going to that water. No, we're not going to those pastures. I'm not going to restore that soul. Why? Just because it's uncomfortable, because you haven't done it before? Like, talk to someone who has. Like, I don't think a pastor who's never had depression before should just like do it on their own. Like, you shouldn't
Right.
have like a sermon series or like a 2-parter or even a 1-parter that you're just doing on your own. Like, of course you need to like talk with people who've experienced it,
Mm-hmm.
but like there are people in every church who need that.
Yeah.
I
And
feel
like
like
the job of a pastor is to shepherd, it's to guide those people to what they need.
And it's not a one and done conversation.
It's
It is
never
something
one.
that
Right.
it never will be.
Like,
yeah.
Just like giving is never a one or one and done, worship's never a one and done. Like, Jesus actually paid for all of your sins, that's never a one and done. Depression is never a one and done. Anxiety is never a one and done. Like, those I think need to be in a teaching cycle every single year, at least. Like, because that's what people are experiencing.
Yeah. I feel like if you're a pastor with depression, once you start talking about it, even members of the congregation that may have never experienced like a chronic depression or something,
Yeah.
like I don't think there's a single person on the planet that won't relate to those feelings.
Yeah, right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so even like I don't have chronic depression, but I'm going to go through hard times. And
Or you're
you know what I
going
mean?
to 100% know someone who does.
Oh,
Right,
gosh,
yeah.
Like, so the other job of a pastor, like Paul talks about, is equipping the saints for ministry.
Right.
Equipping Jesus followers for ministry. So if pastors are not equipping their churches to minister to a hurting world where like there's an increased rate of depression, there's an increased rate of suicide, an increased rate of anxiety, like if we're not giving non-depressed people tools to help, we're missing a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're missing a chance for the church to do what the church was supposed to do in the first place. We weren't supposed to, like, build buildings and huddle together. We weren't just supposed to get a bunch of fancy stuff. Like, we weren't just supposed to huddle together and be like, I love Jesus, yes I do. I love Jesus, how about you? Right?
Yeah.
That's not, like, you read the Old Testament, or the New Testament, you read, like, what people did after Jesus left. None of that was that. It's serving and like bringing hope to a world that doesn't have it, like bringing light into darkness, like helping people. And yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity missed when we don't regularly talk about stuff like this.
Especially, so we're all in the business of youth ministry too, which is a very, very unique, I think, not like very unique ministerial business, I think, to be in. I say business, to just like it's not a business, but
Yeah.
y'all
We're in youth
catch
ministry.
y'all
Yeah.
catch my drift. But sector of ministry, and it's like
Sector.
I don't know, because it's like I don't know. It's hard to because like there's some like I don't know, like I know some students that are like I've just like encountered in my time students that want to go to therapy, but their parents can't financially support it. I've run into cases of parents that don't acknowledge that it's something that they're dealing with in the first place. It's like and that is something that's always so it's like they'll turn, where do you kind of go next? It's like when I was going through it, I had therapy and I had church, and those were my two places that I got fed from. And it's like sometimes those are the options for kids. It's like, well, like especially if this is your community, if this is your circle, it's like there needs to be nourishment. There's so much, like we were talking about opportunity, there's so much opportunity for nourishment there. And I think we're like, I know at least I've confided in every person probably in this building right now at least once about stuff that I was going through. And it's like, and so I think we're in a good spot that can be brought. But oh my god, what was I trying to say? But I don't know, youth, it's a very interesting, I don't know, it's such a wild time to like, even if you don't have like depression, it's something that you will almost definitely encounter during this time, and also not maybe have as easy of access to resources because those resources may not be in your control. You know, it's like I just turned 19, I just turned 18. It's like I just hit that point where it's like I had to really count on my parents to hope that they were going to do what I needed them to do, and I'm blessed that they did. But not everybody has kind of that option, but this is a place that's open for everybody, and
yeah, and isn't it like half of people will have depression or anxiety at some point in their lifetime?
I think it's over half at this point. Honestly,
right.
And that's something that's just going up. In like our lifetimes, it has gone up.
But some of what you talked about, right, of like parents not accepting that. Not that every parent is in a church, but that's where I think, especially as church leadership, as like church staff, as pastors, like it is really important to have those conversations, because like it's not even just the people in your seats who are affected by the silence. Like it is their kids, it is their family members, it is their friends. Like it is so much more multiplied than just like the however many people come on a Sunday that'll be affected by this. Like that silence is legit killing people.
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like, okay, I'm going to steal something from Stephen Furtick again, which I think I've done on every
I would
single...
love to steal his muscles. That's what I would love to steal. Like, if I could have some shoulders, that would be nice.
Yeah, dude. But he said one time...
Sorry that you don't have shoulders. That's really real for you.
He said one time, and I really resonated with this, that Christians a lot of time have turned Jesus into those, like, Woody from Toy Story, where we just pull the string and make it say the same 7 things that we want it to say. So we just... We... like we hang out with each other and we're like, oh, here's how you make it through the valley, and like, ooh, blessed are the poor in spirit, and we're like, and then we just ignore all the real difficulties that everyone struggles with.
I would love a depression sermon about, so in the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Is that it?
Kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven.
Like
Go off.
Yeah, go into depression, right? So blessed are the depressed, because the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Like blessed are those with anxieties, because the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Like, man, you've got opportunities. Like, I feel like we're just like, oh, well, you're blessed, and it's like, okay, tell me how. Tell me how. Like, because I feel like my experience is, I hope you guys feel the same. I've come to a place where, like, it is hard, but it is a gift because of conversations like this, right? It is a gift to have this kind of empathy that I never had before. This, like, specific mode of care that I never had before because I didn't understand. And definitely didn't like believe that I was not close to Jesus because I was depressed. But like being able to walk through the valley of death, the valley of the shadow of death, like that is a whole different set of perspective to bring a congregation. Is a whole different set of perspective to bring friendships, to bring people in my life, for my parents. My mom has depression now, and because she didn't know she had it until I've been going through it. So it's given us something to like have a relationship about besides like, hey, you're my mom and like half my genetics. Like there's so much more connection available to people. There's so much more help I can give people because of what I've experienced. It sucks. I wish it didn't happen. But instead of like doing that and just kind of imploding on like, woe is me, this sucks, you just go, what opportunity is out there? Like, what opportunity is opening up because the last 4 years like have had moments of like hell on earth, you know? Yeah, I would love to see the church accept that for all that it can be, like as an opportunity.
I think it can be such a hard point to get to because I think so much, because like when you're in the moment, you know, and this goes for anybody who's dealing with anything. It doesn't have to be chronic clinical depression, you know, it's like it's just as real in the other ways. It just manifests itself differently, but it's like it's hard, you know, when you're in that moment. And so much of hope that I think I have for myself is all based on perspective, and that's hard because there was a time I didn't have perspective. There was a time I didn't know I was going to get out of this. There was a time that I had legitimately no understanding at any possibility of my life looking any other way than it did in that moment. And it's so scary. And it's like, that was when I threw myself into here, and I threw myself into community, and it's like, I was like, I'm going to learn how to play the drums, and I'm going to join a band, and I did it. It's like, I'm going to do all these things because I've got to take my focus and put it somewhere else, dear God, to get me through this. And I'd have that hope that maybe one day there will be a light at the end of the tunnel, and there was. But I was running just on, in that moment, what felt like blind trust. And it's like, now that I've seen that, now that I know that that is possible, it's a little bit easier in those moments to be like, I can break out of this. Like, I've done it before. There's no reason that I can't do it again. But it's hard because you have to have that first time where you see it happen, and you have to, yeah,
I think it's really important for churches to remember why we exist the whole time. It's like not a community of good people. Like, it is a community of broken people that Jesus is helping. Like, we are looking to Jesus because we're all busted somehow. And like, we need to stop looking at each other in like, I feel like we've got this like hierarchy of busted, hierarchy of screwed up, right? Like, and like, that's just not how it is. Like, that's not how it is to Jesus. Or not how I believe it is to Jesus. When I look at things Jesus said, I don't see there being a hierarchy of screwed up. There's just like, we're all screwed up, right? This is just one of the ways.
We're in this together.
We're in this together, right? And like, so what's the church there for? Like, it's to help everybody. It's to, like, the church is supposed to be the hope of the world. Like, we need to be able to give hope to each other. We need to be able to give love to each other. We need to be able to give acceptance to each other. We need to be that reflection of Jesus in our communities, in our churches themselves. Like, I think especially in light of like depression and all, like what you brought up of pastors just not talking about it. Like,
I think it's nice to say, like, or it would be great to see like pastors just say, I'm broken.
Yeah.
We're all broken.
Yeah.
And even in our brokenness, like, let me show you where the water is in
Yep.
anxiety, in depression,
Yep.
right? And all the things.
Yeah, or even if I don't know the way to the water, let me introduce you to someone who does.
Right.
Right? Like.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to talk about every single thing.
Yeah. Like, I don't I think if pastors realized, like, we don't need them to, like, solve every problem for us, like, their gift to a church is helping resource them, helping them find it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what's awesome is like, you know, a pastor who's a teaching pastor, right?
Yeah.
I do too. My dad's a teaching pastor,
Mm-hmm.
so we have these kind of conversations. And I'm like, you don't have to solve everybody's problem. You can't. Jesus can.
Yeah.
Like, so if you don't know anybody who has depression or who's a psychologist or psychiatrist, if you don't have any of those connections, you at least have the Jesus connection.
Mm-hmm.
So point people to Jesus. Second best is like, point them to someone else who's been through that thing, who can then make that connection too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't need to understand fully how to help a depressed person. Just resource, right? Get someone else on stage who knows, who's not going to say the, like, well, if you're depressed, you're obviously not tight with Jesus. Like, right? You get someone on stage who's like, people are depressed. It sucks. Here's how Jesus can actually give you some hope through your depression. Here's the gift in disguise of your depression. Here's the way that you can uniquely bless the world because you're depressed. Like, here's some of the, like, that kind of perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pastors don't have to come up with every single thing. There's no perfect pastor. There's no need for a perfect pastor, because there is one. Just point people in the right direction. Talk about things that are uncomfortable, and resource your church.
On the topic of resources, kind of like what you're talking about, like, not taking on what you can't handle. Like, there was a little crew of students. Mentoring is the best word I can think of, but it wasn't really mentorship because I was just kind of doing the best that I could. And
That's mentorship.
yeah, I guess that's fair. And they would come to me about things that, like, they were going through, and I found myself, I mean, like, they would tell me something, and if it was like, okay, let me start with this. If your friend tells you they're hurting themselves in any way, and they tell you not to tell anybody, go and
someone.
betray that trust and tell an adult. I don't care if you're worried about whether or not they're gonna like you. I don't care if they're about. I do not care. Tell
Tell
an adult immedially. And but yeah, I mean, because I had a kid who came to me and told me that they were hurting themselves, and they're like, don't tell anybody. And so I immediately went and I told one of the pastors here, actually, and of course they immediately told the students' parents, and of course immediately they found out, immediately went to me like, I cannot believe you told them, you betrayed my trust, I'm never gonna trust you again, you're the worst person I've ever met, I hate you, and I was crying. I felt horrible, like I was crying, but it's like, I'm sorry, like, your life means significantly more than whether or not you like me or not. And by the next day, not saying it's gonna be like this every time, but by the next day, she was glad I had.
Yeah.
And it's like, you've got to look at your part. I know it can be scary, like, if it's someone you're close with, you don't want to betray their trust, I get it, but it's like, you have to look at actually what, like what's actually happening here, and what at the end of the day is going to matter more, and their safety is going to mean more than go to somebody that you trust. Again, I didn't know the parents, I went straight to the pastors, and because I knew they did, and that was how I went to, and then ended up getting where it needed to go, and was handled the way that it needed to be handled, because I was 17 and I knew that I could do it. And it's like also understanding like what your power in the situation actually is, and being mature enough to know what you need to be doing for their sake.
Loving someone is doing the best thing for them, whether they understand that it is or not. It's a long play. It's not a short play, right? It's a like, yeah, you're going to be really mad at me for a while. And like, maybe you won't forgive me, but like, I'm going to keep you alive because I love you.
Yeah, it's like at the end of the day, Yeah. We're gonna go ahead and close it out. Know that whether or not you're dealing with depression, not even if it's just struggles that you have in your life, is just as valid, and that is real, and we encourage you always to talk about it with people that you care about or people that you trust. The four of us obviously are always going to be open to having conversations with you. The other staff is also very open to having. They'll have, if they can't handle it, they've got resources. They know what they can do to make sure they can help you. Because I mean, there's so much love for you guys in this ministry. It's crazy, and we know it can be hard kind of to not hear that stuff talked about, but you're also part of the change, and you're having these conversations, talking about these things, and making that normal in your circles and your community is very, very important and can provide a hope to a lot of people. And I know personally, me talking about my own experiences has also brought a lot of hope to myself. So know that you are covered in love and that it will all be okay. Even if you may not know what okay is going to look like, it will all be okay. And sending all love your way.
If you aren't depressed and you have someone in your life who is, one of the best things you can do is to ask them how best you can help them, because sometimes maybe they need that time alone, they genuinely need that time alone, or maybe they need you to be there but they don't know how to say it. And so asking someone like, how can I help you, is so much better than like you just assuming how they need to be helped and then doing the wrong thing and it being like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes we don't know. So, like,
Yeah.
you got to be patient with that. Like, yeah, there's not always a way to articulate.
Yeah.
You know, my wife would tell you guys that. Like, because, yeah, that stressed her out. But, like, I know I'm not your pastor. If you're not at this church, I'm not even one of your church leaders. But, like, I feel like as someone who's worked in the church for a really long time now, I hope this means something to someone, but I'd like to apologize for us. I can't speak for every church and I can't speak for every pastor, but I'm so sorry that we've let you down. I'm sorry that we haven't said the right thing at the right time. I'm sorry that we've been so behind this issue for so many years. I'm sorry that for many of you guys, the church has not been a place where you feel like you can actually go for help. That was never supposed to be happening. And I'm sorry. I hope you guys know how much we love you, how much Jesus loves you. You're definitely not alone. It feels that way. We're hoping that this conversation can help you feel like there is community in that. I hope someday you realize that there's a gift in your experience. Your gift to the world is that you understand and you can help others. So yeah, I love you guys. We love you guys. Really sorry. And we're going to try and make this right as best we can.
Yeah, and hopefully this is a conversation that's a stepping stone for more conversations.
Yep. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right, so we love you guys and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Good luck, Charlie.